Vulnerability.
Vulnerability.
I know a lot of people think that being vulnerable is weak.
In order to be courageous means that there's something at risk.
Stuffing those things in the closet.
When the rest of the world is saying don't,
that's vulnerable.
Those things about ourselves that we don't want anyone to know about.
Be brave enough to suck at something.
I'm in a closet.
All right. Welcome. Thank you for being here tonight. We are Soul Evolution Collaborative, and we are grateful for you. Thanks for being here. A lot of things going on. We are excited to see how things are unfolding, and really, we need you to do it. So thanks for all your support that you've shown up with. We appreciate it. Thank you. Now, this week, the big thing, the big month, brand new month, we have the building blocks of authenticity and connection. That is our theme for the month. So we're going to look at different concepts, different ingredients that are needed to create authenticity and connection in our lives. That's a pretty big thing. So this week, our first building block that we're talking about is vulnerability. And we're also talking about how vulnerability, how it relates and compares to the idea of strength. So here's the thing. We can't have authentic connection unless we are showing up as our authentic self. If we are getting into, a new relationship and we're putting on a mask in order to get somebody, to more likely to partner up with us or whatever, we're not showing them our authentic self, then we are not going to create authentic connection. So that is very important. Now, the idea of traditionally, when you say vulnerability, for most people, you say vulnerability and strength. They seem like they're counteractive to each other, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. And here's the thing. It's Brené Brown that really brought this idea, this concept up to the surface. Wonderful book, Daring Greatly. So along those lines. So here's the thing. You can't be vulnerable you can't be courageous without vulnerability. The word vulnerable simply means that there's something being risked. So when we say courageous, that means that there's something at risk. When you look at like a hero, for instance, a hero that jumps in to save somebody else's life, that person is risking their life. They can't be courageous without being vulnerable. That's a very extreme example, but that's how it plays out. So the idea of stepping up and being our true authentic self, willing to show ourselves, that is true strength. We've had the idea in the past that strength is not showing any weakness, not allowing anybody to see a side of ourselves that we don't want them to see. Like that's strength is what we traditionally have said, but that couldn't be further from the truth. That is playing small, and that's hiding and sheltering yourself away from that. So when we see people that stand up for others in a social situation where it's not convenient to do so, that is strength. When we help somebody else out, putting ourselves at risk, that is true strength. So stepping into our vulnerability is how we demonstrate our authentic self, showing ourselves in all of us, sharing, finding that significant other, another person, another group of friends or whoever that we can show up exactly as we are, not having to hide anything about ourselves. That's strength. And that's how we're going to create authentic connection. And that's unfolding in this new reality that we're creating. People like Brené Brown bringing this to the forefront, recognizing that people are stepping up, and this is going to make the world more authentic. And that is a good thing. So let's learn a little bit more about how we can step into our authenticity. So welcome to Truth Be Told. Sit back, relax. Here we go.
Before you adjust your sets, no, this is not a horror movie. But I'm in a closet. And let me tell you, it's been a long time since I've been in a closet. But this week we're talking about vulnerability and strength. And isn't that kind of what it feels like, this idea of vulnerability. So the challenge is we spend all of our lives, at least I have, stuffing those things in the closet, those things about ourselves that we don't want anyone to know about, those experiences, those thoughts, those imperfections, those challenges, those things that are hard for us. So we tuck them away in a closet and we kind of forget about them sometimes. And so all these parts of ourselves, it's really hard to bring out of the closet, out of the dark, and into the light. And it doesn't help that in the society in which we live, the society that we have created, that this idea of vulnerability is seen as weakness. And we see that a lot in our language that we talk about, vulnerable populations, vulnerable people, vulnerable circumstances, has this hint of this idea of weakness. And so strength is seen as pushing aside those things about ourselves that we don't like, or pushing through those thoughts or emotions or those feelings and just pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps, bucking it up, and moving forward. But in essence, vulnerability is the ability to be authentic. And so that's why vulnerability, we're talking about this week, is one of these building blocks of authenticity, because it takes our ability to show up just as we are, to drag all of our stuff out of the closet. And my closet's been pretty full for quite some time, kind of like full, like open the door and all the stuff comes down and pegs me in the head kind of full. So the challenge is to be able to open the door, take a look at all those things that we have kept hidden about ourselves, those things that we don't want anyone to know, and to pull them into the light. And that's challenging. That's challenging because sometimes that speaks into the face of this facade that we've created, this facade of who we are. And so when we look at those things that we've kept hidden, when we look at those things that we've tucked neatly away in our little closet, it sometimes may bring to question that facade, that question of how we show up in the world. And so the challenge is to move within, but not to move the way fear makes us move. A lot of times, especially in these situations where we feel vulnerable, we feel a little exposed, we have the tendency to want to move the way fear makes us move. And so the challenge is to be able to step into a space of authenticity, step into a space of vulnerability, bring your stuff, show up, stuff and all, and be able to bring those things to the light of truth, to the light and love of those around us, and to the light and love of the universe. So it's a challenging thing. It's a challenging thing to expose ourselves, to bring that stuff out of our closet. But as we're going to talk about, the opportunities that this creates when we choose to live an intentional life is far beyond anything that we could imagine. So the challenge of vulnerability is worth the prize that we get in the end. And the prize is this truly amazing, adventurous, sometimes messy life. And for me, it's worth the risk.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
I'm going to do everything from the closet from now on.
I was going to say, that was fun.
It was very Blair Witch Project.
Yeah, in the beginning, it was like moving around a little bit, too. It had that like kind of panicky, yeah, it was a good vibe. It worked. It was effective.
The flickering was a good effect. Loved it.
Was that a real candle? That was a real candle.
It was, and I'm surprised I didn't catch anything on fire.
Yeah, that seems safe.
Yeah. That'd been a whole different video.
Yeah, right.
You were kind of vulnerable of burning up there.
Yeah, for real.
It's true.
Sure.
There's a big risk. I love the idea that you brought up. This just caught me. The idea of making fear-based decisions, making decisions based out of fear, or making decisions based out of intention.
Right.
And I think that's super important because in reality, I think it plays out in a very subtle way that so much of the decision-making process and decision kind of oriented thinking that we tend to grow up with is very fear-based, but it was fear-based so long ago. Like it's just become such a generational habit that's kind of gotten passed down. We almost don't, we're not really in touch with the fact that it is a fear-based process a lot of the time. And so much of the things that seem so normal would take this like careful dissecting and unlayering to kind of uncover like, oh, yeah, that is totally a fear-based, like so much of life.
Well, for me, sometimes my kind of like red flag that I'm moving in from that or making decisions from that fear is like that, oh, I should do this. Like my intuition is saying something, but then, oh, but I should do this. And, or if I don't do this, this will happen. That sort of energy, instead of like being very intentional, like this is mine to do, or this is congruent, or this is my intuition speaking and stepping out in that.
Yeah.
For me, I don't know, it has a different energy. I mean, I think it's not easy.
Right.
Because I think a lot of our, like you say, a lot of our decisions come from the fear-based place, and we don't even realize it. Yeah. It's like become part of our idea. I hate to say this, but it comes like this of our DNA, like this kind of like this like little piece that needs to be rewritten. And
yeah, that's interesting.
Once that's rewritten, like everything else shifts.
Yeah,
it's that kind of that fear-based activity gene or whatever that.
What's really interesting about that too, I think that fear has kind of become politicized in a way. And so the way it's talked about recently, I think is not actually fear. It's not actually real fear. Like, you know, the whole like mask conversation or vaccination conversation, or you get it because you're, you know, this side says they get it because they're in fear. This side says they don't get it because they're in fear. It's like, but I kind of look at it like, you know, you don't stop at stop signs out of fear. You stop at a stop sign because that's safe. Like I stop at this stop sign because it tells me that there's cars coming the other directions. Right. That either are not going to stop or also have to stop. But either way, there's like a right of way. There's a system in place. And so I don't stop at the stop sign out of fear. And same thing, you know, I guess to continue the car analogy, I don't wear a seatbelt out of fear. I wear a seatbelt out of safety. And so I think the way we have come around to using this fear and this like politicized tone actually kind of degrades that idea of decisions that are actually fear-based.
Yeah. Like
this DNA kind of ingrained, inherent, hardwired fear that we come with around things like being vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know, we have a fear about, you know, the world has told me to be fearful of being vulnerable because it's not safe.
Yeah.
Because of XYZ. And that's a whole other kind of fear than how we, you know, have heard it talked about, especially over the last several years. So that's kind of an interesting, I didn't even know we were going there.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. You never know what you're going to get. You never know what you're going to get.
It's true.
Yep, it's interesting. I wasn't going to go there, but since you did, yeah, so much of the fear is in the situations is how we are afraid of how others are going to perceive us. I think I say us, but this is what I see like unfolding. Like when you want to go the political national route, everybody is kind of like, well, you know, like that whole idea of doubling down, you know, like, well, now if I back up, then I'm going to be perceived as something else. And that is too big of a fear for me. I would rather be proven wrong, but just still stick to it than be perceived as somebody that, you know, has backtracked, which is mind-boggling to me when you can't
Yeah.
step up and step into.
Huh.
Being able to change your mind is a form of vulnerability. To be able to say, "Oh,
Yeah.
I see things differently now. I admit I was wrong. I admit that I can change my stance on it."
But being wrong is weak.
Yeah. Nah,
And we're
it's
supposed to be strong.
admitting that you're wrong, right?
Huh. Yeah. It really is. It's this interesting interwoven. Yeah, it kind of shows up all over the place. That's fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Sure does.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Let's get a little more.
You know, you got your candle, so you can hang in there as long as you need to. We'll be right here, ready for you when you're ready to come out. Yeah, so being vulnerable. Wow. I guess this is my vulnerability coming out video. I know a lot of people think that being vulnerable is weak, but being vulnerable actually takes way more strength than trying to pretend to be tough and strong and whatever words we want to put on the idea of ignoring who we really are. And so the opportunity this week is to step out of that space where vulnerability is seen as a weakness and step into this idea that it takes so much courage and strength to be vulnerable, to stand up, to show up in this world as who we really are, when the rest of the world is saying don't, when the rest of the world is saying that's wrong or that's bad or you should look like this or don't you dare make me feel so uncomfortable by being who you are because I'm not willing to face who I am because I'm uncomfortable about it. The opportunity is to embrace being vulnerable, because through vulnerability, we actually get to show up more in this world. We get to show up more authentically. We get to show up as who we are, letting the world see who we are, and that actually empowers and inspires others to do the exact same thing. So in being vulnerable, we actually get to be more us. We get to show the world, you can be more you. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to show others what you are feeling, who you are, how you want to show up. When we are vulnerable, we deepen our relationships. We get to show up as our authentic full self in every relationship we have, in the relationships that we choose to cultivate, in the relationships that are most important to us. We actually get to have a deeper experience of those relationships when we have the willingness to show up as vulnerable. And again, that takes courage, it takes strength, it takes a desire so much stronger to look head on at who we think we are when the world has told us, don't do that. And ultimately, we get to find a way deeper and greater meaning in life. Life gets to be this big, grand thing. We get to make it what it is, what we want it to be. But only when we show up as vulnerable. When we show up as the way the world thinks we should have shown up, then the world gets to be what everyone tells us the world should be. But when we have the courage and the strength to be vulnerable, we get to decide how we want our world to show up. And we get to create this meaning in our life unlike anything we've ever experienced before. So that is the opportunity of the week, the opportunity of showing up vulnerable.
Love it. I love it. So that idea, it brings back so many of our past episodes when you said, it's about intention. So when we show up, hiding our authentic self, playing it safe like that, then we are at the whim of the world. The world is showing us how it is in an authentic way. So that was huge. That when we step up into our authenticity, we are creating the world the way that we would like to see it. And that is powerful.
Yeah.
Nice work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I think it creates like a shift in everything around us. A shift in how other people show up, a shift in how we interact with those people as they are showing up in new ways. And it just creates this complete shift. And when I was listening to you talk, I was thinking about like how would this play out specifically in like spiritual communities, you know, like showing up in this like vulnerable, authentic way. And I think spiritual communities are a great place to do that. It'd be interesting to see how we can create that environment in our communities, not only spiritual communities, but in our sphere of influence, creating this environment that invites vulnerability, this environment that invites authenticity, and just kind of holding that space and just seeing how things just shift. Because I think everyone wants to be seen for who they are. I think that whether people like say that, I think everyone just wants to be able to be accepted and to belong and to be able to not have to hide or have to like, I don't know, put on your fancy coat self, you know, and just to show up. And so wouldn't it be very interesting how our interactions would be different, no matter where we are, if everyone was able to do that, because it is this innate desire. I mean, I think it does start with us showing up that way and then living from that space. And then it invites other people to do the same thing. And like who knows the trickle down effect of that.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. Like in my mind brought me back to when I first started attending a Science of Mind community in person years ago. And all of the things, like it's in a way, we have such a different language than, you know, such a different language within the spiritual community than we do outside of the spiritual community. And before getting to that place, before stepping into the physical building, and, you know, it probably took several weeks to kind of start to get a grasp for it. But it's like, I understood the world one way, and then stepping through the doors and spending some time there, you start comprehending there's another way, but you don't really grasp the whole thing. And so what's really interesting about that is that idea of like, when we show up differently, we get to show other people what showing up differently can look like, and it actually creates this space. But the other interesting thing about that is, I think this is actually one of the greatest examples of how this philosophy actually plays out. Because one of the things I came with I'll try and make this short. Famous last words. One of the things that yeah, of course. When I first got to Science of Mind, it was like, you needed to prove to me how this worked, right? Like I came from always, like in my mind, trying to rationalize other philosophies, other religions, and could just never come around to trying to prove to myself, like, yeah, any of these things actually work, right? And so when I heard this idea of like, your thinking literally changes the world outside of you. And it's like, really, like bending spoons kind of thing. Like that's how it seemed. like as if we could bend spoons with our minds kind of thing. And I've come around to that. That's probably possible. There's actually nothing, you know, nothing in the world that says definitively that couldn't happen. There's no reason why it couldn't, other than we think we couldn't, is really what it is, right? But this idea that if I show up authentically, I'm literally changing my surroundings, because everything around me has to respond differently. And the layers at which that unfolds is like you could take that to whatever layer you want. That is a bottomless principle, you know, because you could look at it like, well, you're showing up authentically, so you're smiling, so people are going to smile back because that's human nature. Well, yeah, sure, that's true. You know, you're showing up authentically, and that's different from how you showed up. So people who knew you before are going to react differently. So we have this energetic thing, right? But we also have, I mean, that goes like psychology. quantum physics. I mean, it's just literally, you could go down the list of all the different layers of how this proves out exactly what this philosophy teaches. Probably over and over and over again. And I don't know why that example has never been used before. I think we should write that down because it's like, this is such what a great example of how the world around you, your surroundings literally must change when you show up authentically and when you show up in a new way. Everything around you is going to change.
Well, I think if we trace the fear that we have when it comes to vulnerability and authenticity, I think I could be wrong, and maybe I'm just speaking for my own self, but it's a fear of not belonging. It's this ingrained fear that if I show up this way, somehow whatever I say or do is not going to be enough, or it's not going to be the right thing, and then I'm going to be left separate or other than. And so I think it's interesting. Our teaching does have this unique layer in that we are like our inherent worthiness, our inherent value, our inherent like individualized expression of the divine. I mean, you can't get any more valuable or inherent than that. And so it's interesting once we really kind of sink into the knowing of that. And I think we all have varying degrees of knowing depending on the day. I mean, when we seek into the knowing of that and really grasp that and hang on to it, and we are tethered to that reality, then it becomes very easy, or I would say very easy, less hard to be vulnerable, because that idea of our value and worth is already there in the knowledge of that. And then we can kind of like step out gradually, because this fear of being less than, or this fear of not being worthy, or any sort of fear that has that kind of tone to it, then I think that understanding of our connection to the divine allows us to do that. It's kind of like, those inner tubey things that lifeguards will throw out to you, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They've got a float, and they've got some string to it, but we can like gradually kind of go out further and further because we're tethered to that understanding. And I think the more that we focus on that, the more that we kind of play around with that, let that kind of seep into our pores of our divine worth, I think then vulnerability becomes less scary. A word.
There's one thing I wanted to touch on that you were on there a bit, Reverend Ryan, Reverend Dan drew me to it earlier about like first stepping into a Center for Spiritual Living, and the idea of community, how important community is, and finding that community that helps support you in your authenticity. CSLs for a lot of people is their first opportunity to kind of show their authentic self. I think a lot about when we've taken classes, and then you have, like in those first Science of Mind and Spirit classes, those prereqs that you always have to finish with the project. And that's vulnerable to create some sort of a project that represents your growth from that, 10-week course, and you're sharing that. But, time and again, it's always been proven that this is the safest environment for you to do it, because everybody here is also putting themselves out there and is supportive, and nobody's going to laugh at you, nobody's going to shame you. And so how important that is. And then also thinking like just the idea of community, thinking out into the world of like open mic nights and things like that these are places that you can go show up as yourself, and it's amazing the support and community that is built around authenticity and vulnerability. It's powerful. And how many people sit back at the karaoke bar and they're afraid? That's your chance. Get up there and make a fool of yourself. It's okay. This is the time to enjoy it. And that is the celebration of life, community.
Yeah.
Truth. Well, now it's time for me to do karaoke. No. No. Oh, don't get scared. Please don't turn the channel. No. So now we're going to take a little break. And I just want to let you know that we're so appreciative for all the support that we've received at Soul Evolution Collaborative. This community is amazing, and we have so much fun preparing for Tuesday nights and being involved in everything that SCC has to offer. So what are all the things that SCC has to offer, you might ask? Well, of course, you're watching Truth Be Told, which is our weekly kind of sit down and talk about the themes and all the stuff that comes up around the themes. So we have this every Tuesday at 7 o'clock. Also, Wednesday, we have Unwind Wednesdays with Chris, an absolutely amazing opportunity to be in intentional spiritual practice and meditation. You can, and also on Thursdays, which are our opportunity for our small group gatherings. So we get together in kind of a very intimate Zoom sort of setting, and we talk more about the theme for the week. And the really important piece of that is like, how can we use these principles? How can we use these topics to really practically apply them to our lives? And so all of these events you can sign up for on our website, so evolutioncollaborative.org. You can find all the happenings there, along with some videos as we continue to add content to the website, some video series that just go a little bit deeper into these spiritual principles and how the heck can we use them in our life, because that's the most important part of this. So, and we're always got something up our sleeve, always something new and exciting coming up. So stay tuned. In the next couple of weeks, we'll be introducing another way that you can be involved in this spiritual community. All right. I guess since I'm not going to do karaoke, let's get back to the show.
Vulnerability. It's not weakness. Vulnerability simply means you're at risk. So here's the thing. As we know from Brené Brown, you can't have courage without vulnerability, because in order to be courageous means that there's something at risk that's vulnerable. So let's embrace that, step into that, to become our authentic selves to share with the world. Now, here's the thing. Here's some of the reasons why we have chosen to not be vulnerable. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of looking foolish. All these things have prevented many people from pursuing their dreams, from doing things that they really wanted to do, from maybe asking that one person out that they just don't quite have the courage to, from trying the one thing that they're afraid they're gonna suck at. There's a saying that I've heard a lot lately that says, be brave enough to suck at something. Because all the things, everybody in the world that's done amazing things, they all started at that same place where you would be starting, which is where you're not going to be very good. That's okay. It takes huge courage to step up and try something new and not care about what they're going to say, what they're going to think. I'm doing it for me. I'm doing it for my authentic self. I'm doing it for my soul calling. So that's a big thing to step into that vulnerability. Now here's the thing. You've been pushing those ideas down for a long time. It's time to reconnect with those. So do whatever it takes. Maybe it's something that right now pops in your head like, I'm finally going to do that. Do it. Maybe it's, I have to meditate and ask myself, what is important? What is it that I really want to see and experience and do in this life? I've got the rest of my life left and I don't want to waste it. So ask those questions. And then when you do, then we're going to move into what the tool of this week is, which is say yes. We have to let go. Don't worry about what other people are going to say. Don't worry about what other people will make fun of you for. Don't worry about being rejected. Those things are unimportant. Those are consequences. What is important for life is the journey. We get so hung up on that end result that if I don't get that end result, everything else is worthless, and then we're kind of even afraid to try. But really, the reward is in the journey, in taking those little steps along the way. So just stepping up and trying something that you were afraid to, bam, you have really grown. That is your experience of life, to just be able to know and say, yes, I dared. Again, Brené Brown, dare greatly. Just dare. And don't worry about the consequences. It might be embarrassing. Let that go. That's not important. As we look at life, look at all the people that have done amazing, great things. Yeah, they all started at square zero, right where you are, and they weren't good at it. Now, when we make a mistake, when we try something new and we kind of aren't good at it, we see people sometimes on the sidelines who do make fun, who will point you out. those are the people that aren't trying those things themselves. And that's why they make fun of others, is because it's to cover up their own insecurity over playing small in their lives. When you look at the people that have done amazing things, those are the people that are going to be encouraging, saying, great job, you took that first step, keep going. Take that next step, see how you grow. That's the journey, and enjoy that ride. It doesn't matter so much about the destination, it's just being your authentic self and stepping up into that, what you want to be and do. So the tool for this week is a big Y-E-S. Yes. Just say yes no matter what. When you make this decision to try this something new, opportunities are going to come to you. When you have that opportunity without hesitation, say yes. If you don't, here's what happens. You start to think about, well, am I busy on that day? Or, well, maybe I should think about how I want to do this first. Maybe I need to get it all planned out and have it just right. And then I'll let you know. I'll get back to you on that. Right? So here's the thing. Don't allow any opportunity for hesitancy. Just say simply yes, and figure out the details later. Make that commitment now, say yes now, and then watch for the opportunities and hold to that. That's one way of removing any fear or removing any chance of backing out. Just say yes, do it, try it, and enjoy the rest of your life. It's a good time. Be your authentic self so that people can see and know the real you. People that don't like and want the real you, they're going to fade away. They don't matter. They're not the ones that matter. The ones that matter are the ones that love the real, authentic you. Be your biggest self. You can do this. I promise you can do it.
I love that, Chris. Say yes. That's kind of been my new practice lately. Well, not yes to everything, but like if an opportunity comes, normally I would be like, kind of like how you described an opportunity to come. I'm like, okay, can I do this? Now, will it take this much time? Now, how can I like navigate this? And then I have this like, planned out sort of thing. And Lord, that's exhausting by the time you get to the end. But for me, lately, I've just been, when an opportunity comes, I kind of sit with it for a second and say, is this congruent with my values or with how I want to show up? I mean, those sorts of things. Does it feel right in my body? And then I just say yes, and not without having to work out all the details. And it's amazing that it has brought more opportunities to continue to say yes. Yep. So it's just kind of like this like flow, this ripple effect of doing that. That's a hard place to stay into, but I have, like what you said, it really creates this expansion.
Yeah. I love something you said, I don't know if it was last week, recently, about the idea that like application is the application.
Oh yeah, that was last week. Yeah.
And I've now used that like publicly at least twice since then. And I'm like, oh my God, like it was mind blowing because so often, specifically in this philosophy, people are asking about practical application. They're like, I love this philosophy and it's life-changing, but I need more practical application. And I heard it so often that I'm like, oh, wow, we must be really bad at, like, not just us, but in general, in like New Thought or Science of Mind. Wow, we must be really bad at conveying this in a way that seems accessible to most people. And what I realized over the last week thinking about it, the application of this stuff is so simple. And it is like saying yes, like just say yes and then think about it. And what happens is, you learn a lot about yourself is when you say yes to literally everything and then end up doing stuff you actually don't want to do. Well, now you did it and didn't want to do it because it was something you just didn't want to do, and not because you were afraid of it or not because it was something you had never done, or like you learn so much about yourself. And so then you get to learn the boundaries, I think, of when no actually means yes. Like saying no to something is actually a yes to yourself or a yes to something else, whatever, right? But like, man, that just like it flipped something in my mind last week when you said that about how I think if we're constantly thinking we need this outside application for what we're talking about, it's like, are we missing the point? Are we missing what we're like? Do we know what we're actually talking about?
Yeah.
And there is application of this, but the application is often so simple. It's to do the thing we're talking about. And I wonder if a lot of times that boils down to not really embodying the philosophy or trying to apply the philosophy to things outside of ourselves. You know, are we trying to apply the teaching to the new car rather than a new awareness of our experience, right? Because if we're only treating for the new car, you know, it's like the guy who won the new car in the raffle or whatever, and it was his dream car, but because it was just this, yeah, sure, there's a chance for anybody to win the raffle, but hadn't done like the inner work to actually think that he deserved the car and it got stolen the next day. Yeah, you know, so it's like, sure, you can pray, you can do affirmations to get the new car, but if you don't actually think you're worthy of having the new car, you're not going to have it for very long.
Well, I wonder if it's also this idea, like, if it's not hard, I'm not doing it right. Sometimes I've had that mentality, like, oh, this is easy. I must be doing something wrong. If this is so easy, you know, so it's kind of that, like that mentality too. But, you know, recently, well, like the beginning of the year, I had this opportunity to work on this project, and I wanted to say no, like super quick, because I thought I wasn't good enough, smart enough, didn't know enough, was, I don't know, too short, too tall. I mean, I was not enough. I had all this thing come up. And I was like, no, just say yes. And I said yes, and like in fear and trepidation, but it opened up this amazing opportunity just through the yes.
Yeah, now you're like the expert in the field on the topic.
Well, I don't know about that, but you know, so it's interesting. Like, it's just interesting. But yeah, but it's like you say that by saying yes to that, it opened up this, and it opened up this, and probably like 10 other opportunities as a result of that one yes.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know why I'm always surprised by that shit, though. I'm
Right.
not really sure why I am every single time. One of these days, we're not going to be a surprise. It's just going to be like, yeah, that's.
No, I don't know though. I mean, like, I think about that. Like, is there going to be a day where I'm not surprised when it works? Like,
I always feel like I found a $20 bill in my pocket. Yeah. That sort of surprise. Like, oh man,
yeah.
Where did that come from?
But like, maybe I don't want to not be surprised. It's kind of fun. I mean, it's kind of like I don't know.
It's a fun little energy for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Although, coming to expect, like the fact that we're surprised, I guess there's an element of, oh yeah, huh, it did work. Interesting, you know? So like there is that balance of expecting and also the joy of like, of course it worked.
But Chris, I appreciate the reminder of the yes, of the power of the yes, because it is a powerful thing. Like everything that's ever happened always started with a yes. Everything that's ever been created, everything that's ever been, I mean, everything's always started with a yes. Maybe not necessarily the verbal yes, but just this action forward, which is a yes, which is this activating energy. You're smart, Christopher Laheef.
It's been powerful for me. So let me tell you a little bit about like how that came about. So it started before I knew that I wanted to speak on these kinds of subjects, and I got an opportunity to do it. And I ended up really sucking because I didn't plan for it. I didn't know that you had to plan for it. I thought you just kind of get up and wing it. You don't. That wasn't good. And after that, though, I made the decision that, yeah, it was bad. And then I made the decision, like, no, wait, I want to talk about this kind of stuff, and I want to do it in front of crowds. And that's when I made the agreement. Okay, if I get offered a chance again, which I didn't think I would because it was that bad, I will just say yes, and I'm going to do the work next time. But I'm going to say yes, and I made that commitment then. And the thing is, like, probably, I don't know, a month or maybe more than that, 2 or 3 months after that, I got asked to speak again in front of the center in Cleveland, and I had that first thought, like, oh, I don't know, I'll have to find out what the subject is, and I'll have to let me think about some ideas. All those thoughts like popped into my head like instantaneously, and then I remembered, no, I said I'm going to say yes. I'm not going to blow this chance. And so I said yes. Okay. And then I got the details, and then I went to work on it and tried to figure out what I wanted to say. And it has opened up more doors. And I got, another time after that, a couple months after that, I got asked to do it, and I got my first, paid speaking gig. And I had those same thoughts again. Like, I don't know. Like my mind just had all those reasons why, I needed to maybe prepare. And then I remembered and I said, yes. I said, yes. And then I got the details and I just did it. If I hadn't have made myself make that decision months before that, I wouldn't have. I know I wouldn't have. I would have found an excuse to let me get back to you, and I would have lost the opportunity. So it's opened lots of doors. It's definitely powerful to make the decision now so that you don't have a choice. When the opportunity comes, no choice. You just say yes, get the details later.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. So thank you all for hanging with us and chatting with us. And we hope this inspires you in some way. It certainly inspires us. I know that we always have a really fun time Thursday nights chatting, Tuesday nights in our videos. Every time this group of people gets together, it is truly transformative. So thank you so much for spending this time with us. And if you would like to explore these topics, excuse me, if you'd like to explore these topics a little bit deeper, you are more than welcome to join us Thursday nights for The Gathering, where we dive into what it actually looks like to apply what we're talking about tonight to our individual lives, our collective experience. What does the application of this philosophy actually look like? If that's not quite your cup of tea, or you're not quite ready for that yet, there is so much stuff on our website for you to check out and dive into. We are developing all kinds of video series, evergreen series content that you can study along with, watch and listen to, just get some inspiration, blogs to read, all kinds of things, and more coming up on all that in the near future as it even expands further. And of course, we are supported by your donations, not only your support and involvement with your time, talents, and energy, but also finances, that we exist based on your donations. So if you are in a place where you feel that you are able to donate and support this mission and this cause and helping us do this good work, please feel free to give till it feels good. Go to our website, soulevolutioncollaborative.org, and you can give to whatever extent feels good for you. That's between you and a higher power than us. So we certainly willingly accept all of your gifts. They are tax deductible. You can make that at soulevolutioncollaborative.org. Every dollar helps. Every $50 helps. Every 100, every 1,000, every $1 million donation helps. So if you are in a place to do any of those, we greatly appreciate it. So for some of you, we will see you Thursday night. And for everyone else, we will see you next week.